Good morning. We are here filming another Junior Sabbath School lesson today, talking about in our quiz, the resurrection of Jesus. And in our lesson, it's lesson 33. It's going to be in the upper room. So to start, we're going to just bow our heads and open with prayer.
All right.
Dear Lord, we thank you so much for the ability to gather together. We pray right now, Lord, that you please guide Dr. Logan and myself and help us to, you work through us the words to get across the lesson, Lord, and to be blessed. And we ask that you watch over our kids, Lord, and please help it to be soon that we can meet together. I pray in Jesus' name, amen. All right, so let's just start off with our quiz.
Okay.
Dr. Loga brought some delicious smelling coffee this morning, and it smells very good. So it's distracting me.
The great thing about black coffee is you get to the point when if you drink it black long enough, it starts to actually taste like how it smells.
Huh? Goals.
I know. It takes discipline.
I will have a coffee.
Or just in my case, laziness. I don't like having to do all this stuff. I just want to brew it and drink it. So.
Yeah. Well, I'll have a coffee cup next time. I forgot mine.
So what's our quiz about this week?
Jesus' resurrection. So we're going to be working out of John 20.
Okay.
And 21 it looks like. So if you'll get there, our first question is going to be, number 1, who got to see Jesus resurrected first? And it's going to be found in John 20, 11 through 15. So was it a disciple, a female friend, the gardener, a child?
Well, I know it wasn't the gardener or a child.
Why
But
not a child?
what?
Why not a child? Why did you rule a child out so quickly?
Because I know the story. And there's not a child there, sorry.
I'll give that to you. I was
that
making
we
sure.
know of.
See, I got your back.
I want to say it was a woman. I remember it being a woman.
Yeah, I think it was
It was
too.
a woman, yeah.
I think it was Mary.
Well, it's a Mary. Which Mary is it though? That's the question. And there's a question of, well, we can read.
We can read it.
Let's read it. What is it?
11 through 15.
11 through 15. So it does, I'll say after, but Mary stood outside by the tomb weeping, and as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the tomb. And she saw 2 angels in white sitting, one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. Then they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "Because they have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." Now when she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, and did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" She, supposing him to be the gardener, said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him, Rabboni, which is to say, teacher.
So she knew his voice.
Mm-hmm. She knew
when
his
he
voice.
called her name.
When he said her name, she knew it was him.
Because they talked before and she didn't know, so.
Which there's an interesting parallel to like Samuel there, right?
Right.
Like you hear God's voice call your name and you know it's him. Though Samuel thought
Yeah,
it was
I was gonna say, it's a
Eli.
little
Because
different.
he wasn't attuned to the voice yet, right?
So maybe not quite a parallel there.
But it does say
same
earlier, it says Mary Magdalene.
So it was Mary Magdalene.
Yes, Mary Magdalene. Which there's some debate of whether, and I'm inclined to believe not because of the book of John, of how the book of John is John never calls Mary of Mary and Martha Mary Magdalene, that we know of.
Really?
And so it's believed that they could easily be 2 different people.
Now, Mary, the woman who was cast in front of Jesus, and then he said, "Woman." What that?
That's actually not a Mary. It
That
doesn't even
wasn't
say
Mary.
it was Mary. It doesn't even say it was Mary in that
Because I
scenario.
thought that Mary was.
Usually we tie on, what's usually happened is Mary of Mary and Martha and Lazarus, Mary Magdalene, and Mary and Mary who was cast in front of his feet. We usually, and the woman who was cast in front of his feet, we usually for some reason tie those 3 together, but there's no reason. Well, we don't know. We're inclined to at least believe that Mary Magdalene and Mary of Mary and Martha are different. We do know that Mary of Mary and Martha, Mary the sister of Lazarus, is the one who anointed Jesus' feet.
Okay.
So we do know that.
And she was living in a life.
Well, but essentially, yeah, she was, yes.
A woman of.
Before she met Jesus,
Yes.
but it only kind of alludes to that, right?
Right.
It never actually really goes into
It
it. It
doesn't
just kind of
matter
is like,
because
oh, well, she was,
she changed after she met God. Anyways, that's, okay, interesting. See, little rabbit hole, but one question
Yeah.
number 2. The answer was, of course, a female friend.
But that's a common thing, a
Yes.
theme of Bible study is how many Marys are there?
There's a lot. There's at least 3, right?
There's at
the
least
mother
2, yeah.
and the
Mary, yes, Mary, mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mary of
female
Mary and
friend.
Martha. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right.
Female friend.
In John, number 2 is in John 21, 10 through 13. The disciples realized that A, Jesus walked on water. Jesus made them breakfast. B, or C, Jesus washed their clothes. This one's tricky, but
Well, based on the context, I'm
Right.
going with the breakfast.
you have to know the story, right?
Yes.
Because he did walk on water,
But that happened much earlier before the resurrection.
and it's
so.
saying in this specific passage. So you read that for us?
10 through 13, you said?
Yes.
Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish which you have just caught." Simon Peter went up and dragged the net to land full of large fish, 153, and although there were so many, the net was not broken. Jesus said to them, "Come and eat breakfast." Yet none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" knowing that it was the Lord. Jesus then came and took the bread and gave it to them, and likewise the fish. This is now the 3rd time Jesus showed himself to his disciples after he was raised from the dead.
So he made them breakfast.
But what's interesting about this is if you read this just before that, it says, so this is he has them cast the net, right? They're kind of like sailing, and they haven't caught anything all night. But that's the funny part about it, is that this is the 2nd time this has happened, right?
Right.
That they haven't had much luck. The first time was when Simon Peter, when they were first sort of first called, right?
And isn't it interesting that the first thing they did after Jesus died, like it's been just 2 days, and they're out. They were already like, what are we supposed to do? Well, I guess we're gonna go fishing.
Well,
We're gonna
actually,
start
no.
fishing
It's been a little while that we know of. We know that it's been a while because he's already appeared to the upper room and everything.
Okay,
He's
okay.
already gone into the room when all the doors were locked, and they're like, "How did you
Right.
get in here?" Right? And he just appears there,
So
right?
it's been a minute.
And it's been a couple. He actually appeared a couple times in the upper room because one time Thomas wasn't
said it was
there,
the 3rd.
and the next time. So this is the 3rd
So
time.
it's been a minute. Okay.
So it's been a while. So they're used to seeing him, but he's kind of like, sometimes he's here, sometimes he's gone. Sometimes he's here, sometimes he's gone. It just kind of appears randomly, right?
But interesting though that they didn't go. They weren't ministering right away. They went back to fishing. They had this huge life experience for at least 3 years, maybe the full 3.5, but at least 3 years, right?
But Pentecost hadn't happened yet. That was
No.
kind of the big promise. And he hadn't
Right.
given his disciples the gift of
Right.
it told them about this yet.
But
that we
still,
know of.
they went right back to fishing like it had not happened, you know?
Yep.
Anyway, so the answer was, of course, made them breakfast. Now on to 3.
Well, I was gonna say, sorry, the thing I was originally gonna say was, so they cast out this nest, he has them like catch all these fish, but what's so funny about it is I think a lot of times people when they read the story, they're like, oh, and then they went and they ate some of that fish. They didn't eat any of the fish that they actually caught. He already had breakfast ready for them.
Oh, interesting.
So like they're hauling in these fish, they're like, we brought fish. Oh, you already made breakfast. Like, you just did everything. You
Yeah.
literally just did everything.
We did all this work.
So he's already like ready. He's like, nah, come, take a load off. Sit. You don't even have to cook breakfast. Like, we're all ready to go. It's all ready to go.
This is also the story that Pastor Isaac preached on a couple of months ago, where Peter just jumped in the water. He didn't wait for them to row the boat. This isn't that one?
No, this is the one.
Yeah.
No, this is the one where he's like,
Yeah.
it's the Lord. Now, when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment,
Yeah.
for he had removed it and plunged into the sea. Yeah.
So here he is fully clothed in all these long, heavy clothes, and he's trying to swim
Yeah.
to the shore because he just couldn't
I
wait
do
to
remember Pastor
row the
Isaac
boat. It was-
preaching on
yeah,
that.
it's pretty funny.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. Finally.
3. We're not gonna rabbit hole anymore. We're gonna stay on track. Jesus said this very cool thing that gives us great peace today at the end of Matthew 28. You will see me no more, A. B. I will see you in heaven. C. I am with you always. Now I actually know this one.
I do too. It's how the book of
Because-
Matthew ends.
It was Colby's memory verse last year, and when I had to teach her. And so thank you, Mrs. Jinky. I know this one. It's found. It says at the end of Matthew 28.
It is. It's at the very. It's the very end. But I'm gonna start I'm going to start in verse 19 before that. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And I think a lot of times we think that it's like, well, when I die, I'll finally get to see Jesus, right? Like, but He's with you already.
He's with you already.
He's with you already.
You don't have to see him. That's what faith is knowing he's there. So C, I am with you always. Okay, after the resurrection, the guards and chief priests circulated this lie. It's found in Matthew 28, 11 through 15. A, that the tomb had been attacked by dogs. B, a fire consumed the body. Or C, the disciples stole the body.
The disciples stole the body is what I believe
Is
they
what I
said,
believe
yes. So, 11 through 15.
Yes.
Now while they were going, behold, some of the guard came into the city and reported to the chief priests all the things that had happened. When they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers, saying, "Tell them his disciples came at night and stole him away while we slept. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will appease him and make you secure." So they took the money and did as they were instructed. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day.
So that his body was stolen by the disciples. What's interesting is that until I read Desire of Ages, I'd never really fully understood that. I always thought the soldiers died when they saw the angel, but they didn't.
No.
They lived.
Yeah.
And so instead of reporting this incredible thing, but they did later, didn't they later, I think they later did talk about it. And
I
say
don't remember.
Anyways, rabbit hole. But it's just interesting that they didn't die, but for money, again, he was betrayed, right?
I kind of figured they didn't die. I feel like that would be kind of mean. It's like,
Well, I thought
you're just doing your job. You're just doing your job, and because you happen to be there at the wrong place at the wrong time, like.
I just thought the glory of the Lord was
Yeah.
what overwhelmed them. So it was C. Okay.
All right.
According to John 20, verse 3, John and who else were the first disciples to reach the tomb? Was it A, Peter, B, James, C, Simon, or D, Matthew?
I believe it was Simon. 20 verse what?
3.
Verse 3. This is actually so it says, Peter therefore went out and the other disciple and were going to the tomb. And this is after they had been told by Mary Magdalene what happened. So this actually happens before Mary sees the Lord, okay? This happens. But they don't actually, they just find the empty tomb and then go back and tell the other disciples. But Mary kind of stays there and cries like, where is Jesus, you know?
And it's interesting because it says Peter and the other disciples.
We talked about this last week, right?
So how John never really
But it gets even better though, because it says in verse 4, not to go down too many rabbit holes, but they both ran together, and the other disciple outran Peter and came to the tomb first. And it's John writing this, right? He's like, and I won, by the way. Which is similar to what I told you about Mark before, right? We're pretty sure he's like, oh, and this random guy like went running naked from the gun. So it is fun because it reminds you the humanity of these people, right? And like, I won, by the way.
The other disciple was much faster than Peter.
Right.
So it was A, Peter.
Peter and John, I believe.
Peter
Peter and John were the two, yeah.
Okay, number 6.
Yep.
According to John 20, verse 9, the disciples still did not understand this important fact, that Jesus would die, that Jesus would not rule Israel now, that Jesus would rise from the dead. That one's kind of...
I just looked at it, so I'm not going to tell you what it is.
I would think he's not going to rule, because I think that was the misconception the whole time, consistently, was that he was not going to be a ruler right now. So I would guess B.
Well, so the interesting thing about this, again, based on, to sort of let you know where this happens in the story, this is between when Mary sees Jesus and when the disciples have run to the tomb, like the last question, okay? This is between the first question and the last question we just saw.
So it'd probably be would rise from the dead then, in that context.
And so, yeah, based on the context, which is still interesting that they didn't realize this, right? It says, then the other disciple who came to the tomb first went in also, and he saw and believed, for as yet they did not know the scripture, that he must rise again from the dead.
Okay. So it was C, would rise from the dead. Number 7, John 20, verse 17. Jesus had a mysterious reason for not wanting Mary Magdalene to hug him. Is it A, his skin would turn to mush? B, he would turn into a ghost? C, he had not yet ascended to heaven.
Yep.
So I really, we don't believe in ghosts. There's only one ghost, right? The Holy Ghost.
And he's not the wicked
He's not
witch
a
of the
ghost.
west.
No.
So he's not going to turn to mush. He's not going to melt.
Has to be ascended, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
All right, so 20, verse 17.
Verse 17. Jesus said to her, do not cling to me, for I have not yet ascended to my Father. But go to my brethren and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God.
So he had not yet ascended to heaven.
And I love, again, he ties himself back to humanity, right? He's like,
Yes.
he's my God as much as your God, right?
Yes.
Even though he is God. That's always confusing, right? It's like but technically as fully human, it's also his God, right?
Yes. It's interesting.
But Ellen White actually tells us that what it was Jesus was, on the one hand, he wanted to console Mary, but there was also sort of a dual purpose of like, he wanted to make sure, the humanity in him wanted to make sure that he had done the sacrifice right. He wanted to go to make sure that like his sacrifice was enough, that he had done it correctly. And so he had to go to the Father to be like, no, don't touch me. Like, I got to make sure it's right.
Yes.
I got to make sure everything's good.
It is finished.
Yeah,
it is
it's actually
absolutely
finished.
Okay, number 8. After doubting Thomas believed, Jesus gave this blessing in John 20, verse 29. Blessed are, A, those who do not see and believe, B, those who require firm evidence, or C, those who don't go off the deep end. Well, I can go off the deep end, so I hope I'm still blessed, but I don't think that was what it was.
I don't think it's because of that.
Faith is all about seeing, is believing but not seeing. So I don't think it was firm evidence. I think it's going to be those who do not see but still believe.
Well, so an interesting thing about that actually is faith, when you read how Hebrews describes faith, it's not because of lack of evidence. It's you have lots of evidence, but you'll never be able to concretely prove it.
Right, because you can't see it.
And so faith is actually informed. It's not just blind devotion to something. It's not well, everything's telling me this, so I'm going to do this, right? Like it's not well, I have faith, I can fly. I know gravity. I know all these other things. All the odds are against me.
Right.
But I can still fly. Like I have faith. It's not that. And I think a lot of people, especially non-Christians, see it like that they see it as that. I'm like, well, no, it's actually I have all of this evidence. Faith is finally we still have this bridge between the evidence. We've put the plank of the evidence out to cross the chasm, but we're not quite there yet. Faith is the leaping over to the other side, believing you can still jump to the other side. But it's informed. Faith is very informed. It's not misinformed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It's interesting. Anyways, but yes, I agree with you. And it is,
verse 20, it's chapter 20, verse 29.
Verse 29. Okay. 20, verse 29. Okay. Jesus said to him, Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed.
And so Jesus was talking about us in this time. And like after he ascended to heaven for good. Blessed are us who believe in him, because we don't have the advantage of seeing the miracles for ourselves and seeing Jesus for ourselves.
And I had never thought of this, but remember what I talked about in the book of John last video, about how it's written to people, and this was to people who had never seen Jesus.
Right.
And that's why John's writing this. He's like, and by the way, Jesus said this to all of you who's reading this book, all you who never got to see Jesus. Blessed are you if you believe, even though you haven't seen him.
And again, that's such a powerful thing to not forget to put into your, that's really powerful. All right, so we're going to unscramble.
All right.
I've already unscrambled it because I'm such a smart person.
So, what did John want everyone to believe at the end of his gospel? Sjusi het Sashima. Hey, that actually sounds like words.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of a pretty name. You could still name, Arabella.
I'm not naming her Sashima. That's not
All right. Well, I tried.
It's not an English name, at least.
So I think it's Jesus is the Messiah.
Yeah.
Woo!
Nailed it.
Look at me. All right. So we're going to move into our lesson, Dr. Logan.
All right.
Okay, so
this week's lesson is, let's do something a little bit different for this week's lesson. So we're going back before the resurrection now, okay? We're going to some events the week prior to the resurrection, okay? We're going a few days back in time. You ever see those shows where it's like it shows something and you're all confused what's going on, and it's like a few days prior, Well, that's what we're doing now.
Jumping around.
So now we're a few days prior. So I want you to close your eyes.
Okay.
Close your eyes. Okay. So first, I have a question for you. What day of the year do you look forward to more than any other? And you all can do this as well.
I look forward to Thanksgiving.
Why do you look forward to Thanksgiving?
That's probably, I would say Thanksgiving or 4th of July. it's a toss up. It's probably 4th of July. Probably 4th of July because we get together. We go to Arkansas, and we get to all stay together, and we go on the boat and get to see fireworks. And it was a special. So it's been a special holiday. So.
Okay. Oh, good. So you get to see like people's stuff. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, some of you probably, especially our younger viewers, probably think Christmas. It's usually Christmas. But a similar thing, you get to eat stuff you don't normally get to eat, right? And so on. Okay. Sorry.
Are my eyes staying closed?
Now your eyes can go closed. Sorry, I kind of did it ahead. So I want you to imagine, and I want you to imagine you're a Jewish child in the time of Christ, and you're getting ready for your first Passover. Okay, maybe you're 12 years old, right? And you're finally going for your first Passover. At least that you can remember, right? Maybe you were taken as a child to be dedicated or whatever else, right? I want you to really think about it, okay? And I want you to really try to imagine that you're there, okay? Even focusing a lot on like sensation and senses and stuff of what it's really like, okay? So really get yourself in there, okay? And again, all of you at home can do this as well. So your parents have planned for months. Your mother makes food for the journey, and your father saves up to buy a Passover lamb. It might take a week of walking to get to Jerusalem, but you don't care. You're excited. You set out in early spring. The roads are full of happy travelers. As you walk along, you sing psalms and listen to stories of great men and great victories in times past. You get a whole history lesson. You get to learn a lot about your people's history. You find the streets of Jerusalem crowded with tens of thousands of pilgrims. Like most of the others, you and your family camp outside the city. Before the feast begins, you and your father go to the temple to choose a lamb. You are shocked at all the noise inside its courts. Animal sellers and money changers are everywhere, and they charge your father far more than the lamb is worth. He pays because the lambs sold here are the only ones the temple priests accept, and a Passover without a lamb is unthinkable. Some distant relatives who live in the city invite you to bring your lamb to celebrate the Passover with them. On the afternoon before the feast, you return to the temple, where a huge assembly line has been set up by the priests to handle the thousands of lambs brought by the people. After your lamb is slain, the blood is passed from one priest to another until it is poured onto the burning altar. Then they give the lamb to your father, and you make your way out of the temple. You feel a little disappointed. You had always heard that the blood of the lamb was needed to cleanse sin, but that was hardly mentioned. At sunset on the day of the feast, you gather for the meal. There are about a dozen of you all together, and you all follow the special ritual hand washings before you sit down to eat. The meal includes the lamb, unleavened bread, and bitter herbs, just as when the children of Israel were freed from Egypt. During the meal, the Exodus story is told, with everyone drinking unfermented wine to celebrate certain parts of the story. On the original Passover, the Jews were set free from bondage in Egypt. Now everyone hopes that the Messiah will come soon to set the nation free from bondage to Rome. After the meal, you sing a song, but you don't go back to your tent until morning, as part of the custom is to remain in Jerusalem all night. Now you don't mind. You stretch out in a quiet corner and are soon fast asleep. So, open your eyes. Tell me some of the things that you noticed, that you really noticed in your
for me
viewpoint. Yeah.
I noticed dustiness because there'd been a lot of movement, a lot of people walking around, so there'd be a lot of dust. I thought of the noise. It had been very noisy. I love history, so the history and hearing the stories would be really awesome. So maybe some of the ascendants of some of the people who did cross over and everything would be kind of cool to kind of have the first hand. There's a lot of years difference, I know, but still the stories passed down.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about going to the temple and kind of like Christmas morning, if you were to wake up and there's no presents, how disappointing it would have been to have this in your mind hyped up to what it would look like, and then you get there and it's just not what you think.
Have some feeling of
let down, just
yeah. It's like walking across. It would be like walking across the stage at graduation, and be like, well, I felt like I was supposed to change in some way, right? And I didn't. You just pass the blood from one to the other, put it on the altar, like, okay, next person, and it's just like an assembly line.
Didn't get to have that special cleansing feeling moment. So I think the excitement of getting there, and then just this is the next disappointment, Christmas morning disappointment. Be like this year last year we didn't get to have fireworks on 4th of July. Going through the whole day and then ending it with just darkness. Just kind of.
Down in Cleburne, we all went out to the depot and they had fireworks there.
Good for you.
I'm sorry.
But I mean, that's kind of just the
Mhm.
select down disappointment. Sad.
So now that we kind of have a mind of this, we kind of have an idea, and I like that story because it kind of helps you see the expectation of what Passover was supposed to be, right? From the child's perspective, like, oh, it's going to be this great thing, you know, cleansing from sin. Oh, we're going to reminisce about it, and it all starts off that way as you're traveling. But once you get to the day itself, it's like, isn't what I thought, right?
Which can shake your faith,
Yeah,
right?
it can,
if
yeah.
you have so much excitement and then you're disappointed, if you
Mm-hmm.
are looking forward to that event more than what it means.
So it says here that the disciples had probably all come to Jerusalem each year for the Passover from the time they were 12 years old. So they had done this for many years, right? For them, the Passover was a time of joy and celebration, and they especially looked forward to celebrating with Jesus this year, just a few days before he had entered the city like a king. And of course, there was something big here. So something to remember about this is Jesus had already told them that he was going to go down to Passover. He also said that he was doing it to be handed over and
Right.
be killed, right? He had already told them this, and they were all like, that's a weird thing for him to say, but guess what? We're going to Passover.
Yeah,
Yay, right? This is exciting, right?
Kind of
Right.
cherry picking
Right.
what the message was.
But it's interesting because up to now, Jesus has sort of avoided Passover, or at least for the last few years, he had kind of avoided Passover. We know that because actually the feeding of the 5,000, as we talked in a previous lesson, was during one of the past Passovers, right?
Because they were all there.
They were all, and so he's up in Galilee
Right.
feeding all these people when everyone is down at the, And so they still got a great meal, though.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just saying, they still got a great meal.
They were full.
So they were full. Everybody ate to fullness. So, but I want you guys to really think about how disappointed. Now thinking of the child's disappointment, the disciples are now setting themselves up for a very similar disappointment,
On a greater
unfortunately.
scale.
And I don't know about you, and it kind of irks my wife at times that I kind of live my life trying not to be disappointed. I had a lot of moments in childhood where I would be disappointed, and rather than experience that again, I now constantly try to curb my expectations. I never want to hope. I never want to get excited about stuff. I'm just I'm that person who's
Pessimist.
well, I don't want to say pessimist. I'm a realist, okay? I'm trying to have realistic expectations. I'm trying to temper them. I mean, I still get excited. When stuff happens, I get excited. But when people are oh, but this exciting thing could happen, I'm like, we'll see. It could, but let's not be too hasty.
It feels like realist is a synonym for pessimist. But
I'm just saying it's worked out pretty well for me. I'm not super disappointed.
yes.
Okay.
If that's what keeps
On
you
the one
optimistic,
hand, I may not get to experience all the highs everyone else does, but I also don't experience the crushing lows either.
That's true.
So
That's true.
very middled out. But I think the disciples, they couldn't contain their excitement, right? Especially after the triumphal entry, right?
Oh, yes.
They're he rides in as a king. They're it's happening.
Yep.
It's finally happening.
Yep.
And there's a time where he laments over Jerusalem. They're oh, that's a little confusing. But he's just talking about times of the end. He's talking about the end times. But right now things are exciting.
Yes.
One day everything's going to pass away and whatever. But right now we're finally going to be free from Rome. This is exciting, right?
They're probably thinking Jesus stopped bumming us out, man.
Right.
This is it.
So stop talking about how we'll all die one day, right? That's probably how they thought. It's like today is Christmas Day. One day we're all gonna die. Dude.
Today's Christmas.
Stop.
Yeah.
Why are you talking about this? So yeah, during this time, Jesus is he's really starting to experience the pain of the cross, right? And he knew. It says Jesus knew that his disciples had terrible disappointment and heartache before them. He knew how disappointed they were going to be, right? It says he would be with them for only a few more hours, and he wanted to make every moment count. They still had so much to learn. What were the disciples arguing about as they entered the room for the feast? So they find this upper room, right? They find a place to have the feast, which, by the way, in our quiz, that same upper room, the same place where Jesus tells them about, tells Thomas, blessed are you and stuff, this is the same room.
Yeah, same place.
It's the exact same room,
location.
okay? It sort of became their de facto meeting location during this time.
Right.
Both before and after he was crucified. And so, what are they arguing about as they go up? Well, of course, they're all excited about this, so naturally they're arguing about
Who will be the greatest?
who will be the greatest in this great new kingdom,
Same old argument, right? They've already had this one a couple of times. Even got their mama involved.
And I want you to think, what would you do if you're, that's a nice one. I'm sorry, I just processed it. That's a good one. No, I want you to think about how would you respond if you were Jesus, if you knew this was happening?
Well, luckily for y'all, I'm not Jesus. Because as a mother, I would want to be, we're all equal. We're all the same. Stop trying to put each other above each other. I love you equally.
But even more so, think about the fact that you're about to die.
Right.
And I think a lot of times it would be like, no, be serious. That would be the thing. I don't have much time left with you. Be serious. This is serious.
Praying.
Stop joking around. Stop doing that.
Yes. Like when they're praying, wake up. Don't you understand? Wake up. This is not time to sleep. It's time to pray for me. This
is a big deal.
Yeah. And they just didn't get it, which is, like I said before, a comfort to me, because if they were right there with him and didn't get it, and he still loved them so much, how much he must love me too.
But it's interesting because he didn't do any of that.
Right, he didn't.
He didn't.
Just loved them.
He says, instead he listened to his Father's voice, telling him how to reach the hearts of his disciples. He soon found a way. And so, what happened? How did he actually find a way to do this? Well, so you were talking about how dusty it is, right? It's very dusty in the city of Jerusalem, right? And so dust gets all over them. So something they had to do, and it talked about ritual hand washing before, but this, like so many things the priests did, and unfortunately a lot of people, Christians do today as well, is sometimes we miss the practical application of things instead of I can't eat this, I can eat this, but not this. And the reason why is, the Bible says so. It's like, yes, but why does the Bible say that? And maybe there's some things that we eat now that we really shouldn't eat anymore. There's certain things that, and maybe there are, for instance, some diseases and stuff that back then we had to quarantine for every little thing, but maybe we don't have to do that. You've got to understand the practical significance of these things, how to apply it exactly. And so one thing, the reason they had the ritual hand washing, it wasn't just supposed to be ritualistic, it actually served an important purpose, which is that you don't want a bunch of dirt and stuff there contaminating your sacrifice. It was very symbolic, it was very important. Well, here, from a more symbolic thing, their feet were probably really dirty.
Yes, and probably hurt from walking and the sand grinding at your feet, and
And another thing to think about here is, it was usually, they kind of just willy-nilly found this upper room, right? They kind of had to search around and they found a place to eat it. They're like, we got to find a place that can accommodate all this. Well, somehow in the accommodation of all of this, they don't have anyone to wash the feet. So now the question is, who's going to wash our feet? We didn't plan very well. Right. But no one wants to dampen the mood, right? The mood is like, I'm going to be the greatest. No, I'm going to be the greatest. Isn't the kingdom going to be so great, At worst, it's bragging and competitiveness. But I think even there was a good side of it. They were excited, They're about to eat the Passover. It's finally going to come to fulfillment, It's exciting, It's like talk about Christmas on Christmas Day. It's exciting.
But I think they were kind of also going to be a little full of themselves, because they were like, we're with him. So when this all comes to play, we're the guys that have been with him the whole time. So they're kind of full of themselves, kind of big head, kind of. That's how I see it. And not...
Probably comparing how long, when he called them and stuff, to be like, he knew though that I was more important, right? Because of that.
I got to see him raise a child from the dead, those kind of little things. So I think that it was, they weren't humble. And this is the most important part of, I think, foot washing, is humbling yourself.
So they're all kind of thinking, they're probably thinking in their minds I don't want to dampen the mood, and I certainly can't do it, but our feet are dirty. We can't keep going. We can't proceed till we wash our feet, right? We can't proceed with eating and stuff because we're disgusting,
Right.
And so, so Jesus figures out, I know what I'll do. I'll wash their feet. And of course, as you can imagine, they didn't take super kindly to it. It says, as he washed their feet one by one, he prayed that the pride and jealousy would be washed away from their hearts. When he was finished, the hard feelings were gone from all except Judas. They no longer felt they must have the highest place. They just wanted to be like Jesus, to have a heart that thinks of others, and will be glad to do the humblest duty if it will bless others. Now, an interesting thing, and if reading something else, I realized that actually, and this may be a Desire of Ages thing, so I don't remember this in the text, but apparently he washed Judas's feet first. So I do wonder if there was sort of a heart pang that happened because he started with Judas, and Judas was like, why did he start with me? Like, how does he know? Because before this is before they've eaten, so it's before they've actually
called him out.
Yeah, before he called him out and told him. I wonder if there was a bit of a heart pang on Judas, and so Judas is kind of in this mindset of like, I don't know, should I still do this? Like, I mean, he's being so nice to me, like, am I going to really repay him this way? But
I felt like in the Desire of Ages, it very much feels like when he went to the upper room, his decision was already made. Like it was already it was already pretty. So I don't know that he would have had the heart pain. He might have sort of had that guilty feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that it was a heart like, am I doing the right thing? I think it might have been.
I guess I don't know because I also remember something from Desire of Ages of it being he was kind of debating it, but then when Jesus said, whatever you're going to do it quickly, Judas somehow accepted that as and see, he's okay with it. He's okay. But because his heart was already kind of in the wrong place, he totally misinterpreted that.
Maybe that's it. So I need to reread that.
Yeah, I probably should too.
Either way, Jesus washed the feet of the person and he knew he was going to betray him.
Mm-hmm.
He went through every process. He didn't make anything different for Judas. Judas was included in every single way that the disciples were.
He was. Yep.
Even though from the beginning, Jesus knew.
And so, something that you may not know, but I don't know of any other denomination that does this, but this is a very uniquely Adventist thing, is the foot washing.
Oh, wow.
It's not typically done with other denominations. Something else to remember about other denominations of Christianity is that they a lot of times participate in the Lord's Supper every single church service.
Right,
and so that's another thing. And even if they have a candlelight service or any time they have a church service, they do it. They do the Lord's Supper of the bread and the grape juice.
Right. And that makes it more ritualistic and takes, like you were saying, takes away
It does take a little bit of the specialness away.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why Adventists, Jesus never says how often do it. He just says, do this thing in remembrance of me. So he definitely commands us to do it, right? But he doesn't say sort of how often to do it.
Right.
And Adventists, I don't know what led to it, but we kind of decided that at the end of every quarter was kind of when we would do it. So every 13 weeks we'll do this. That way it's still a special.
Yes.
But yeah. But we also incorporate the foot washing into it as well.
There were a couple of times in high school when I would go to Agape Feast, and that's really, really special. When they would have the Agape Feast prior the night before, the foot washing and everything the next day, it was really special to go to the Agape Feast. And I noticed that the teens are going to be doing Agape Feast in a couple of weeks, which is really, really cool.
And I mean, what would be really neat to me, I've never gotten to do this, but I've always wanted to, on a Thursday night before Easter, really do the whole reenactment thing of we come in, we do foot washing, then we do an Agape Feast, and in the middle of the Agape Feast, you do the Lord's Supper. And it's kind of like a full reenactment of what it would be like.
I think that's something we could think about this year, even.
It would be, yeah.
Depending
COVID depending. But it would be I think it would be a really
special,
special thing to do,
To really connect with them.
I mean, it's a Thursday, so it's kind of hard to do, but, I mean, it doesn't have to be Thursday. It could be a Friday night, but still, yeah. Okay. But anyways, yeah. So, it's something I've always wanted to do.
That would be really cool. That'd be really cool.
But the important thing here is we integrate the foot washing partially for that, because we understand there's a process to this. There's a process of we need to humble our hearts to really get the full impact of the communion service, right? We as Adventists feel that it is very important, just as Jesus did the foot washing as a sign of humility to teach us humility, we need to participate in that. And so, to kind of close us out today, did you have other thoughts? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that it talks about in how Galatians 5:13, again, he says, by love, serve one another. And it just comes down, again, to love.
It does.
And what did it say? We said last week that in the end times, love will wax cold. And so I think that is definitely just something, again, that we need in this world, is love.
And two other things to add to that is in the book of John, 1 John, I believe it is actually, in the book of 1 John, which is actually my favorite book in the Bible. I love the book of 1 John. If you haven't read it in a long time, it's really good. You should read
short.
it.
It's easy.
It's short, but it's also very biting. It says things such as if someone says if someone says they are my disciple but doesn't keep my commandments, they're a liar, and the truth's not in them. And I mean, it has biting things, but it also has some really nice sentiments, such as it says, "By this people will know you are my disciples if you love one another."
Yes.
That's the number one way
Yes,
people will know.
I think it's in the Bible a couple of times.
I think it's in John. I think it might be in John. I think it's in the book of John as well.
Yeah, Jesus
But
says it.
I do know in 1 John it says, "We love because he first loved
Yes.
us."
That's
And I love that. We actually have that in our, someone painted that and we got it as part of like a gift exchange a few years, several years back when we were still living in Knoxville. But we have that actually in our bedroom.
Yeah,
we love because he first loved us. And it's
awesome.
And it's such a simple verse, right?
It's
But it's such a big
powerful.
verse, right? It's a very powerful verse. So this whole idea of love is very pervasive throughout the Bible. And I think it's the real point.
Yeah.
I think love is the real point. I know it's easy to be like, oh, love, especially with Valentine's coming up, So we have this as a society, we kind of have, we have sort of a degraded view of love. Love is either like, ooh, romantic love, or it's
I love this food.
or it's like, I love this food, or, love, touchy-feely, or hippie, like, love and peace, man. But like, it's not any of those. But this is love as in,
self-sacrificing.
I am willing, this is the most sort of blatant, low level to kind of understand it, is just the whole concept of, I care far more that you're happy regardless than I am.
Yeah, self-sacrificing.
And just the idea that it is far more important to me that you are happy than that I am happy. And now imagine, it's easy to say that, and then we're like, but who's going to take care of you? It's like, well, that's the genius of God's system, though. If everyone was loving, we'd all be taking care of each other and wouldn't have to worry about ourselves.
And the point
That's
being
the
that
scary
Jesus,
part.
let Jesus take care of you that way. But it's hard to do that. It's a very self-sacrificing thing.
It is. But on that note, yes, do not forget that by love, we are to serve one another. And that's the big thing about the foot washing and everything.
Awesome.
So,
Well, thank you, Dr. Logan.
you're welcome.
And we'll go ahead and have closing prayer with that last thought. It's very powerful. Dr. Logan, you pray for us?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for everything you've done for us. Thank you for giving us the Bible so that we're not just in the dark as to not just what's happened in Earth history, but all the wonderful truths that you've spelled out for us in writing. Please be with us. We thank you for loving us first, even long before we ever loved you. And we thank you for giving us the example of foot washing. Please, as we go into the church service and as we continue in the Sabbath day, please just be with us and help us to not focus too much on the ritualistic of the things we won't get to do on Sabbath, but really see your love in it, of the idea of giving us a day off. Please just be with us in all these things and continue to bless us until we can be together again in person. In thy name, amen.
Amen. All right. Y'all have a good week.
Bye.